Hello, this is going to be my initial review of the VIRAN action camera recently purchased on Amazon. Just going to talk really quickly about what I do like and what I don't necessarily like about this camera. So let's just talk about the things that I don't like about this camera. Again, this is an action camera, very kind of rugged, solid feel to it. Supposedly waterproof without any underwater housing, but I'm not going to test that because I personally will only test cameras that have underwater housing just in case I don't want anything to happen to this camera. So one thing I don't like is that really to kind of open the area with the USB port and the area for the micro SD memory card. This is kind of a thick, really thick kind of flap here. So if I push this all the way down, to get it back up so that I can open it, I really have to use like a little thin metal object and really try to pry it upward and try to pull it upward, and it's takes a lot of effort to do that. So that's one thing I don't like. I mean, you really want to be able to access this area with the USB port and the memory card very easily. In this case, it's extremely difficult. So much so that I've even kind of scratched up that area while trying to pull up this flap so I can charge the camera by inserting the USB cable. One other thing I don't like is that the video quality isn't necessarily great recording things that are far away, but recording things up close, the video quality is actually very, very good. So that's one thing that I thought wasn't ideal. The picture quality can be a little bit fuzzy for things that are farther away, but for things that are close to the camera, the video quality is just fine. I only tested 1080p 60 frames per second, and I found it to be acceptable. Now let's talk about the things that I do like, which are several things. One, the battery life on this camera seems very good. So once you've charged the camera with the USB cable, it seems that it will sustain. The battery life will be good for a decent amount of time. I don't know, maybe at least an hour of recording. I don't know. I haven't used this camera that much, but so far it's been at 3 bars fully charged for a decent number of minutes. So I'm going to say battery life is okay. I really do like the rugged feel of this camera. The fact that it has a dust-proof design, so meaning if I just touch the lens, it's not going to attract smudges and dirt. I can just kind of wipe away any little dust with my finger and it should be perfectly fine. So that's good. Very solid design. Little space for a tripod here. So very quickly, two things I like about this camera is first, going to photo mode. Let's talk about photos. I know this is an action camera, so we don't really think of these as being primarily for photos, but in this case, I was very, very surprised. The photos on this camera, for being a cheap action camera, the photos are very good. In my opinion, I liked it very much. Another thing is that when recording videos, the audio quality is actually very good, which I was very surprised because given that this camera has kind of a rugged design, I was expecting the audio quality to be very muffled. But when I'm recording videos and I talk and I do some commentary, the audio actually comes across very well, very, very crystal clear. So for doing commentary, things of that nature where you're talking while recording, this camera actually does a very good job. So overall, my initial review is that I do like this product very much. I'm going to have to keep testing it out. I've only tested it out for a day. But so far so good. Just kind of difficult to access the area with the USB port and the memory card. And video quality, recording things far away, just kind of looks a little bit fuzzy. Definitely not the best video quality. Definitely not the best video quality, but for recording things that are a little bit more up close, and especially when you're talking, it picks up audio extremely well. So for that, I do like this camera, and the photos are outstanding in my opinion. So a solid camera, not my favorite camera. If I had to say I'm going to pick a cheap camera for around $50 with the best video quality, this is definitely not for the best video quality, but for audio and photos, definitely for me a good purchase. And it doesn't hurt that this camera has a built-in flashlight which can be accessed by holding down the settings button. So built-in flashlight is also nice because you can record at night for objects that are nearby while the flashlight is on, so that's pretty cool in my opinion. So this has been my initial review of the VIRAN action camera. Following this video will be some sample videos and photos so you can see for yourself what the video quality looks like and what the photos look like. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day. Initial review, VIRAN action camera. Video samples and photo samples will follow shortly. Hello, this is another 1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the VIRAN action camera. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the VIRAN action camera. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the VIRAN action camera. Purchased on Amazon. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the VIRAN action camera. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the VIRAN action camera. Saturday afternoon. This camera is supposedly waterproof without the underwater housing. Not going to guarantee that for your device, but for my device, so far so good. The camera has functioned and recorded and not sustained damage while recording underwater, which is good. Again, this is the VIRAN action camera. Several video resolution settings available. This is 1080p, 60 frames per second. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the VIRAN action camera. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the VIRAN action camera. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the VIRAN action camera. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the VIRAN action camera. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the VIRAN action camera. Underwater video test with the VIRAN action camera. Underwater video test with the VIRAN action camera. test with the VIRAN action camera. Hello, this is a 1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the VIRAN action camera. It is drizzling today, but this camera is waterproof without underwater housing. So far, so good. I'm not going to guarantee it's going to be waterproof for you, but for me, so far, so good. It has worked underwater, so should be able to withstand this light rain. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the VIRAN action camera, purchased on Amazon. You can see it's cloudy today. It's cloudy, but for this camera that should not be a problem, even though you can see some precipitation. Hello, this is a 1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the VIRAN action camera. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second. ten eighty p video test, 60 frames per second with VIRAN action camera. Ten eighty p video test, 60 frames per second with the VIRAN action camera. Ten eighty p video test, 60 frames per second. The VIRAN action camera.